Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Seth from Engage Podcast. Before I jump into today's episode, real quick, if you, wherever you're listening to this right now, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever it is, if you could, one, subscribe to our channel, subscribe to our podcast, that will help you get notifications every time we come out with a new episode. But also, if you could write a review for our podcast, that would be fantastic because that would help people immensely to find out whether or not this podcast is worth their time. If you've been fed by this, if you've been encouraged by this, if you write a review letting other people what you've experienced, that will help them to take a listen as well. So if you could subscribe and write a review, we're all set. All right, thank you so much. Today's guest, his name is Russ Penn. He is the pastor of Second Missionary Baptist Church in Farrell, PA. Again, Second Missionary Baptist Church in Farrell, PA. And when I tell you that this episode, it just is absolutely amazing. I felt so encouraged. I felt so just spiritually, mentally, everything fed by this. After you hear it, you'll find out why. You guys are in for a good one.
Welcome back to our podcast here at Faith Presbyterian Church, where we are sitting with the Reverend Russell Penn on our Leader2Leader podcast. Russell, we're so glad you're here today.
I'm glad that you invited me. It's a privilege to be able to just share with somebody I consider a friend.
Oh, I appreciate that. Here I go making noise again.
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, my sidekick here, Seth.
Yeah.
How are you today?
I'm good.
Yeah?
I'm good to be here.
And so I've noticed, Seth, every interview you come in with a fancy shirt. Today, tell the audience what you have on.
So it's a shirt that has a pizza with a slice missing, and the story behind it is that I have a lot of like matching shirts with my kids. I have two sons, and so this one I have this. It's the pizza with one slice missing, and each of my sons have a shirt that just has one slice of pizza, so that when we're out and about, it matches. But it never works because unless I'm with them, people don't get the reference. So I have a ton of these shirts, and after a while, I just started wearing them, and it's a good conversation piece because people are like, "Why do you have pizza on your shirt? You look like someone who eats pizza, but why are you wearing it?" And that's when yeah.
All right. Well, that's something that our listeners can imagine in their mind's eye, right?
Well, I wore the Bacon Pizza 2016 shirt with Anthony and Marissa. So there's like a pizza theme on this.
Okay.
Well, we have to stop talking about pizza.
I know. We know.
Yeah,
We
it's
have this.
lunchtime, too.
We do share the struggle.
Yeah, it's a great thing to have for any meal. You
Yes.
know, I don't have to have pizza for dinner. I can eat pizza anytime.
There's I think for me, two foods that no matter what mood I'm in, if somebody says these foods, I become hungry and I'm like ready to go. Pizza and tacos. Wow. Whenever someone says that, I'm ready.
See, mine's pizza and burgers.
Okay.
I love me a good burger. So.
Russell, do you have a go-to?
A good meal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you know what? Because I'm a connoisseur. I kind of like a lot of things, and so if it's good, then I'm gonna appreciate it.
Right.
You know?
Okay. I gotcha.
That's cool.
Well, like I said, we're glad to have Russ. Now, am I going to call you Russell or Russ? What do you like better?
I will answer as you speak.
Okay.
You know. So.
All right. Sounds good. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself.
You know, I'm originally from Greensboro, North Carolina. Grew up in the '60s, down in the South, until around age 13. Come from a divorce, broken home, single family, single mom, raising 4 children. Moved to Cleveland for junior high and high school. College, went to Florida, joined the military after college, and then moved back up to Ohio once I got done with my military time. and somehow I ended up in Western Pennsylvania, and I know the somehow, but just to give you that little background, married, 3 children, 2 boys and a girl, 5 grandkids, so life is good. I like parenting. I enjoy being a father. I don't think that there's a greater gift to families than fathering. And so therefore, I have issues with men who don't want to father their children or, not just birth them, but raise them. Any good farmer knows that the work doesn't begin just with the seed in the ground. The work goes with the nourishing and the raising, of the fruit or the plant that's been planted. And so, as a father, I believe that I take that same principle.
Right.
Same practice.
So you mentioned the military. What branch were you in?
I was in the United States Navy on 2 guided missile destroyers, DDG-38, which is the Luce, Luce, and DDG-42, the Mahan. And so we were guided missile destroyer 1, the Luce based out of Mayport, Florida, or Jacksonville, and the Mahan out of Charleston, South Carolina. So, it was 6 years at sea, no shore time. Did North Atlantic and Persian Gulf tours.
Wow.
And so got a chance to see some things in the world that I wouldn't have seen if I wasn't in the military. However, you know what? It was a great experience. I could still steam the ship. I was a boiler technician.
Okay.
On board. I was oil king, water king, which meant I tested all of the fuel oil products, both lube oil and fuel oil.
Wow.
And the boilers as well. And so I could still steam a ship today if need to. I shouldn't say that too loud because they may call me back in.
When this is over, you're getting a phone call.
No, the great thing that most steamships have been decommissioned, most boilers have been decommissioned and they went to gas turbines. So I think I'm safe in that regard.
You're good.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So military, 6 years. If you could give us, what did it teach you? What did it instill in you? Are there any values or principles that you learned from that 6 years that you're different now because of it?
I went in late. I wasn't a kid when I went in. I went in as a grown man. I was 24 years old, just a couple of hours shy of my bachelor's degree. When I went to boot camp, I ended up getting my degree before I was ever stationed on a ship. And so most of it for me was just doing time.
Gotcha.
I had signed up. I was going to give it the best. I met great friends lifelong friends that we still see each other, talk to each other, contact each other. Just the discipline, the regimen. I like order. I like structure.
But was that something you went into the military with that sort of just crystallized that with you? Or was that something that was taught to you there?
No, I think I went in with it. I grew up an athlete, so as an athlete, I always had some sort of drive, discipline, to accomplish things.
Right.
I never settled. Always wanted to be the best at what it was that I did, and so therefore, I think I went into it. I think family structure. I think there was, even though I went through a process of divorced parents. When I left North Carolina to move to Cleveland, I moved from a single family mom to a dad who provided structure, order, discipline, totally different than I had when I was the man of the house. As
Dad didn't play, did he?
Oh no. It was culture shock, from having some freedom. I was the baby
Okay.
of four. I'm my mother's.
Yeah.
I'm my mother's youngest.
I know that. I'm the baby too. I know all about it.
So I'm, with three older sisters at the time. I was pretty rotten. I know that. And nothing's changed in all these years. I'm as rotten today as I was years ago.
So did your older sisters then baby you too?
Still do.
Okay.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm still the favorite son.
Yep.
Baby brother. And they always have taken up for me. Now, further on, I ended up with three younger sisters. And so I was the baby brother of the older sisters and the hero of the younger sisters.
Wow, look at you.
And so I was right in the middle of both worlds, wherein, I couldn't go wrong, And I remind my older sisters all the time, I'm the oldest brother that you have. Now, I'm not the only brother that they have, but I'm the oldest brother.
Right.
And so I can flex a little bit, when I decide that I'm going to pull some brother rank, and then they'll let me know, but you still my baby brother.
Right. I like it.
And
So, listen, I have to ask this. We talked a little bit about fathers and fatherhood, right? And what advice would you give? We just had Father's Day last week. If there's something that dads need to do, fathers need to do, just generally in this country, what is it?
Love your children. They didn't ask to be here. Once they're here, then you need to do everything you can to love them to life. Make sure you're there. A presence is necessary. God created this situation of fatherhood so that we would understand him a little bit better. And so if we give a bad impression of fatherhood, then the impression of God will be bad, because we say, our Father who's in heaven, hallowed be thy name. If my dad was a rotten scoundrel who was never at home, beating my mom, or none of these things happened. But what I'm saying is the image,
right?
If the image is bad on fatherhood, then the child will grow up with this skewed view of God. And so fathers need to make sure that they take the time, love on their children, impart into them godly wisdom, not just street wisdom. There's some things that we just can't take a shortcut on, and being the leader of a household is one of those things. If you want to see some messed up children, then just take a look at the structure of the family. The father, is there an active father present in their lives? Because that's a challenge.
This last Sunday, I did a Father's Day message, and the theme was fathers, and I did kind of share different things fathers should be intentional about. But one of the quotes I shared was, and I don't remember who said this, but it was, one father is worth 1,000 schoolmasters. Right?
Yeah, I think I can understand that statement, because the lessons that should be taught, fathers, nothing against, no slight against moms, but you raised a question about fathers. Fathers should make every moment a teachable moment. You have to know how to incorporate life in their daily activity, and so don't let them get free passes. Don't give it away. Don't blow it off as if that wasn't important enough to say something to. We need to use it as a teachable moment, not banging it over their heads, but presenting to them a view that they should consider of embracing.
Well, you think of, I'm sure, the Deuteronomy passage, right? Teach these things, impress them upon your children. When you walk by the way, when you sit with them, when you lay down, the teachable moment should be a consistent rhythm in the father's life, where they're intentional, lifting up these moments to help their children.
Absolutely. I think you mentioned something in the previous podcast with Commissioner Moore about even in James, the sins of commission and omission. But those teachable moments should be, an ongoing view. Your life, here's the way it says it in the letter to the Corinthians by Paul, that you should be a living epistle. People are reading your mail all day long. And so what story are you telling as they read your mail? Because if you're going to let them be an open letter, then you better be saying something worth imitating or repeating or following after.
That's good. It's very good.
So I sent you a list of questions, but I want to pursue this a little more because I think this is important. Why do you think so many dads don't live that way? Because, we're talking about intentionality. Why are there dads that it's just not on their radar? Why is that?
Because their dad wasn't on their radar. And I think this is something that now, culturally, one of them is forced upon a culture that they didn't ask for. During the times of the 1700s, African American men were separated from their wives and their children by force. They never had a chance to even see or raise their children because they were separated by slave owners. And so therefore, over time, it was a strategically imposed plan of dependency upon the owner. If I separate them, if I distinguish and divide the community by hair structure, nappy, straight, light skin, dark skin, big bone, small bone, house slave, field slave, then I can control them and make them always dependent, And so growing up, if a man has always been told he was no good, you're not worth anything, you don't have to stay with the family because, that has how it's been, then the woman devalues him saying that you're a no good man, I don't need you. Then all of these things take place.
It's like a perfect storm.
Man. This, and so we're dealing with this culturally daily. We see it. And so, America has the largest prison population in the world, where they have separated men from families. We're talking about men and families. And so fathers have been separated. Children are raising themselves. They don't have guidance and they're leaving it to unscrupulous kinds of people to raise them, And so we kind of like relationships by nature. We want to have some kind of interaction and relationship with one another. And so if you can't get that relationship at home, you're going to get it from somewhere.
Right.
And it's not always healthy where you find relationships. And so, that's the struggle, man. It's nothing new. We repeat ourselves all the time. We just haven't learned the lesson. That's why God has a way of never promoting before the learning, before the understanding. And what he'll do is allow you to fail and fail again and fail again until the lesson's learned. It's not like our school districts that get tired of you and push you through. No, God says, no, until you get it, you'll stay right here.
It's kind of like the Israelites in the wilderness circling around, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Until you get it. And no, there's always an end point. He'll say, you'll just die and we'll start over.
Right, we got to start over. Right? It's like time to hit the reset button.
Yeah, that's right. We'll just start over.
So thinking about fathers being influential, who would be an influence in your life and why?
There's probably several people. And it starts with family because I come from a pretty large family. There were my great grandfather had 18, my grandfather had 14, my father has 10, children. And so our family dynamic is large. Our footprint spreads and covers a lot of territory. And so I've had a lot of role models, good and bad, in my family. Second, coaches. I had some coaches starting all the way back. Please don't take this against me, because I can remember 1965 and 66.
We're talking football. Coach?
No,
football? No.
Well, this was basketball coaches.
Okay.
They were just high school coaches, and I was in elementary. All right. And so while I was in the first and second grade, in Greensboro, North Carolina, the coach of the high school sons were my best friends. The coach and my dad were friends. My dad was gone. Mr. McKee, Jonathan McKee, had two sons that were my age. And so what he did was he took us into the high school and taught us basic basketball fundamentals at 6 and 7 years old, and then let us play at halftime of the high school games. So Mr. McKee was essential. Mr. Boyers, who was also a coach at the high school, I looked up to those guys because of the structure and discipline that was not there in the absence of my father. And so I watched and admired and committed myself to want to be under that kind of structure. There's some things in life you don't know how you get to where you're gonna go. I wrote myself a note about what is my life about. If I had to tell you something about myself, I wrote that I was broken to build broken people. I was broken early. I had to understand what it meant to be broken, to feel broken, so that I could build people who were broken, And so those are things that we don't really take into consideration when you're early. And watch this. You never realize your purpose during your struggle. It's after experience that you really come to know your purpose. So experience really is a good teacher. We don't always want to experience what it is that we go through, but it was in my brokenness that I've learned how to survive and trust and grow so that I could be beneficial to somebody else. And that's kind of how I live, is that I understand. I'm not in denial. I know that I've been broken in life. I know I've had some hardships. I know that I've disappointed people because of poor choices and decisions that I made, But I also realize that nothing has been without purpose. And so even when I was making bad choices, there was a greater cause taking place and operating in my life that I didn't understand or see. His name is Jesus, the Lord Jesus Christ. God in his fatherhood was operating on my behalf, even in my failures, my faults, flaws, and failures. God, I kind of compared myself to David one time, when in spite of David's flaws and his failures and his, disappointments to God, he was still deemed a man after God's own heart. And I pray that, God, please see me like that, even in my faults and my failures and my flaws. Still see me as a man after your own heart.
I know Seth he doesn't know you as well as I, and he was interested in kind of your calling.
Yeah. Well, my question is, with the resume that you have, what led you to want to become a pastor?
Yeah. It was not by choice.
Really?
It was. Now I'm gonna give you this answer, and then I'll show you why I couldn't escape it.
Okay.
John 6:44, unless the Father calls you, you can't come.
Right.
So I had no intention on doing this. My parents were educators, and so I went into engineering so I wouldn't have to be a teacher. But as I got, moved on through life, and here's what got me in ministry. My father died. My father got cancer back in 1999. In January of that year, he hands me this manila envelope and says, all of my business is in this envelope, and it also has my eulogy, and I want you to preach it. I said, Daddy, I'm not a preacher. He said, I didn't ask you all that. He says, you are my beloved son in whom I'm well pleased, and I don't have anybody else who can say or would say what I want done except for you. Now, I got 3 baby brothers and, again, 6 sisters.
No pressure.
He says, you're it.
Wow.
In August of 2000, he dies. And I had to do the eulogy. So between August of 2000 and November of 2000, there's this incredible weight, this incredible fire that has been ignited in my spirit that makes me want only God. Now, I said that I get back to this one point. It's in my DNA. My father's father was a pastor, preacher. And my father's mother's father, my great-grandfather, was a preacher. Self-educated, started the first seminary, Bible college for the Holiness Church of America in Goldsboro, North Carolina. Self-taught in Hebrew and Greek, had a wide range of philosophy, And so while I tried to escape and while I tried not to become a part of it at all, it was in me. And then once I started teaching, once I started preaching, once I got into ministry, I found out that there's nothing else I want to do. I'm like sold out, been sold out. You know what I mean? I have a passion for not only preaching, but I have a passion for preachers. Anthony kind of knows that, I met him at a time where he was in a place, and I just was a brother who came along and put my arms around him because I just love men of God, And so I hope that helps you, in answering. But now, Grandpa Diggs said this about a preacher. Any man who won't invest in his own education is like the dumb dogs of Isaiah who can't find anybody to listen to him bark. Why should anybody want to hear anything that you want to say if you're not willing to make the commitment and the investment in learning your craft or skill? And so I have spent my preaching life from August of 2000 to June of 2020, saturating myself in the Word of God. Now, I don't walk around quoting, scriptures from, I've had to grind at this thing, Learning for me was not simple. I was one of those kids who might have been in honors courses, but I got C's, B's and C's, sometimes D's, in calculus and those kind of classes like that. But once I became an adult and moved into the life of ministry, well, really the military made me a better student because I wanted to excel. I wanted to be number one soldier, number one sailor. I wanted to be the most sharpest cat on board the ship, that kind of stuff like that. I feel the same way. It started with athletics. I used to ask God to say, let me carry my passion from football into ministry. I was a linebacker, center and a linebacker. And so I asked God to let me take my same aggression as a linebacker and a center, CENTER, not SINNER, let me take that same passion and aggression into ministry. Let me be tenacious, in ministry. Let me go after it. And I think that any preacher who does not have that kind of drive, should question his call. A friend of mine, and we listened to other people. This statement came up: if you can quit ministry, you should quit ministry.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, if you can walk away from this thing, you should walk away from it. Now, I'm not saying that there are not things that come up in life as far as depression and anxiety and things like that can overwhelm you, and you can be abused in ministry as a pastor as well, which can sometimes cause you to walk away from it for your own health. But if you can find something better to do than preaching, I don't want to know you. I don't think there's nothing else better to do. So I know that I'm taking up a lot of the question time, but
no,
this is all good.
The point of this is just to have an organic conversation. Yeah. So, and that's what we're doing. Yeah. You're offering a lot of value and insight, not only for Seth and I, but for, I think, our listeners. And locally, it's good for people to hear this and know this.
Yeah.
But what I want to do is I want to turn a corner, lighten things up a little bit, and I want to know, what does Russell do for fun? What are your hobbies? What do you enjoy?
I'm content in being still and quiet. I'm content with reading a book. I like sports. I am a fan addict, not a fanatic. Not a fanatic. I'm a fan addict.
What does that mean?
I am a fan of every sport. Okay. I'm like addicted. I'll watch golf. I'll watch curling. I'll watch soccer. I'll watch any type of competitive event. I guess it's just the competitive nature.
Right.
That if you can find reason to compete, then I like that. And so that's kind of like one of my hobbies, is sports. Now, I like listening to crashing waves on the seashore as well as a babbling brook in a stream. I like those kinds of things. I like nature. I like being outside. I like to see the artistry of the Creator. I like to see God's handiwork. Those kind of things are my hobbies, is to watch His glory in action.
So would you say that inspires you when you're plugged into those things? Do you find inspiration from that? Are you gaining energy from that?
Man, I try to gain energy wherever I can. I'm sitting in this room gaining energy, you know what I mean? Because you asked me about who influences me, and I told you family and coaches and stuff like that. But it really depends on at what age.
Right.
Because I'm still being influenced today, both by peers, by children and grandchildren. I never miss a moment of trying to be inspired and encouraged, and so I think so many people rob themselves of thinking that they know everything, and they miss out on some of the greatest things in life. It's almost like riding down the highway and all you see is the yellow lines and the stuff blowing past your face as you're going at 70 miles per hour. And then you'll come back by that same way on the return trip and say, I didn't see that when we went by. Well, you know what? Life demands that you slow down and appreciate what's around you so that you can see how great this place is.
Right.
But if all you do is run at your speed, never taking the time to look around you at the beauty of what surrounds you, then you miss out on what God has in store for us in this life.
I tell you what, I had to learn that lesson because I'm just naturally, I've gotten better as I've matured. But if I could go back in time, my 4 years in college, which was in Georgia, I would watch the other kids going out and exploring and going to the city and doing all this great stuff. And I always just blew them off, and I'm here to study. And, I would be in the dorm on a Friday night and a Saturday night, and there would be like, remember the Westerns with the tumbleweeds going by the room? Yeah. And I kind of look back and regret because I didn't make that a fuller experience.
Man,
but I had to learn that. But that was a time in my life where I can associate with what you're saying, sort of living in the fast lane and with blinders on and not appreciating the what's happening around you. So I've tried to get better at that, especially with the kids. The kids have really helped me with that.
You know what? Being in college, now I'll say this to the audience who's listening. I have not cheated life at all. I have lived it to the max. I have done things that I shouldn't have done. I've been places that I shouldn't have gone, And in college, again, my competitiveness and my drive to just do carried over both in personal life and athletic life. And so I learned how to do some things while I was there. I would study from 4 o'clock to about 8 o'clock. While all my friends is out doing their thing, playing in the hallways on dorm campuses, doing their stuff, I'm studying from 4 to 8. About 9 o'clock, I'll come out my dorm, and I'm able to stay up from 9 to 11, 9 to 12, because my work is done.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I would learn how to get done what needed to be done before you start having fun. Mm-hmm. Now, I also knew how to get a good night's sleep. Because if I didn't know it by 11:30 that night, I'm not gonna know it by 1 or 2 in the morning. Right. So let me get a good night's sleep. Wake up at 6, take a fresh look at it again the next day, and maybe I can approach it from a different place than I did when I was exhausted and tired, not being able to comprehend because of fatigue.
Very cool.
Very cool. I do have one more question, and that is, so we have this nice picture behind me that says smooth seas never made a skilled sailor.
Yeah.
And with someone like yourself, who's obviously, just from me sitting across the table from you, and I've only known you for the last 36 minutes, you're someone who has a lot of influence and a lot of energy. And when people see someone like you, they see a lot of the success. But my question is can you tell us of a time where you either tried something and failed, or it didn't go your way? And the reason why I ask that is because young men like myself, we tend to always let our failures we tend to let that override our path of success. We say, oh, I failed at that. I'm no good at that. I should stop. But to get to a level of success, to get to a level of influence like you have, just tell some, whether it be one story or a couple, about things that you tried and failed and what lessons you learned from it.
That's tough. It started early. Disappointing those that you love by poor choices that you make, for me, was a failure. Because I didn't want to disappoint mama. I didn't want to disappoint my uncles, my aunts, my family name. Growing up, all you had was your family name. They would remind you all the time.
Yeah.
Boy, don't you know what your name is? And so I made some choices while I was 10, 11 years old that forced me to have to go live with my father. So I failed early by making some bad choices. I think that's probably one of the things that hurt me the most, to let me see that I failed at something early, but it didn't kill me. I got married at 19 years old. 20 years old, after being told, don't do it. I'm a junior in college, playing sports, football, my dream. I'm on pace to graduate in 4 years. And I make the decision that in spite of what Daddy said, in spite of what Mama said, I get married anyway. And for the next 9 years, I struggled. I failed at marriage. I failed at what I did not ever want to experience, what my mother and father did.
Yeah.
But I learned something. Here's what I learned about relationships, because I was young when I got married. I used to be mad at my father for divorcing my mom after 25 years. But then when I had my first relationship with a woman, I said, I don't care why daddy I don't care why daddy left mama. I'm crazy right now, I got all of these emotions and feelings going on. I don't know how to handle this,
Yeah.
And so I struggled. I failed at that,
Mm-hmm.
And it took grace and it took mercy for God to get me back up off the ground and learn how to be vulnerable and trust again. And so now I've been married 28 years to my wife, and I'm just as happy as I can be. Another failure that ended up being a blessing. My first assignment in ministry ended as a disaster. It was not that it started as a disaster. It was a blessing to be called and sent to the location where I was. I was in Grove City, Pennsylvania, at the Mount Olive Baptist Church in Grove City. A friend of mine, almost family member, died there as a young man, 40-some years old. I had been like a supply preacher when he was going out of town on vacation, so the congregation already knew who I was. He died on like December 28th, and by January 1st, they were looking for somebody to just kind of fill the role in the pulpit to keep, so they didn't have to look for a. And so I went on out and we started growing together and, doing things as a church, watch the church grow. I would put up, we would have booths on campus of Grove City College and Slippery Rock University for freshman orientation. I got a school bus to go pick up the students. We were doing stuff. But then it was like I hit a wall because some folk felt I cared more about the young people than the existing family structures that was there. And so therefore, we don't want you to be pastor anymore. And as a first assignment, I'm crushed. I'm thinking I'm a failure. God, how did this happen? How did you let this happen? I was doing everything that I thought that you desired for me to do. I was preaching, I was teaching, I was loving, I was caring, I was doing everything that I thought. And, the lesson was that, after you fail, you learn. You should.
Right.
And so the lesson was you need to prepare, or you need to know how to get back up after you've been knocked down. And so those are some of the things of failure that ended up not a failure, because I don't look at anything as a failing moment, a failure. A failure is someone who refuses to do anything about the situation. Failing in life happens when you're doing something. And so because you may fail at something, it also gives you the opportunity to get back up and do something else about it. And so after being out there 2 years, I come back to my home church. My pastor tells me to just stand fast, don't go anywhere. I'm retiring soon. I'm hoping that they will take you in as pastor. And so when he retired, I ended up being at the church that I came here in 1992 as a member. Wow. I ended up being their pastor. And for the last 9 years, from 2011 to 2020, the church that I came here in 1992 to visit, I ended up being the pastor.
And remind folks the name of the church and where it's at.
I'm the pastor. I am the proud pastor of the Second Missionary Baptist Church in Farrell, Pennsylvania, 1138 Spearman Avenue, 16121. And that's my joy. Second is my heart. I'm married to her just like I'm married to my wife. I long for her. I look forward to spending time with her, and this pandemic has just caused me all kind of emotional disturbance, because I can't put my arms around her. Right. I can't, we are a touchy-feely, huggy kind of congregation, and this pandemic just does not fit that model.
Yeah.
But I hope that's been helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Seth.
Big time.
Because it's a struggle. You know what? And when you're talking about failings, mm-hmm. you always need to look for the other side, man. I'm an optimist. I believe in there's always a better. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to put the work in, but I believe that there's a better. And so broken relationships were part of what I failed at. Broken promises. Sometimes I think I failed my children because I spent more time at church than I did with them, and I kind of missed the color. My wife would have to remind me that you had a wife before you had a church.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we need to listen to anybody in ministry who's married. Please take this under consideration. Your wife is your first calling. Well, God calls you, but then your wife, then your family, then the congregation. Mm. Because when the congregation's gone, you still have wife and children. Mm-hmm. And their love is different than love of a congregation. Sure.
Well, that's and also it's important for anyone listening, if they're church folk, that's not just advice for the pastor for his wife, but that's also good advice for the church in adjusting their expectations for the pastor to realize we want to encourage him to keep that standard of loving his family first. But I do have a couple more questions, just short ones.
Okay, listen, I'm curious. I'm good,
man. I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on this.
Okay, all right. Well, let me throw this in here before you ask that question. When you're in the middle of your failings, just cherish every moment. Mm. Cherish every relationship. Cherish every time that you have to spend with one another, because they're precious, because you don't know how much time you have. Mm-hmm. And you don't have time to be angry or vindictive or, against anybody.
Yeah.
Because time is precious. Okay.
That's right. I heard it said one time that sometimes a rainbow is better than the pot of gold. Right? And if you spend your whole life, some people spend their whole life searching for that pot, right? But 90% of your life is lived under that rainbow, but you're going to miss it. So, just like coal is under pressure for thousands of years, right? It's getting beat up and pressed upon, but it's only after that pain does it come out looking like a beautiful diamond. Yeah.
Well, that's why I'm going to piggyback, because you've been preaching through James. James 1 talks about letting perseverance finish its work. And I love that, because it kind of what you were talking about is it causes us to slow down during hard times, to pause, to take it all in, to look at your family, look at what is really important to you, and also to do what you're talking about too with the diamond. Those hardships are going to build you and craft you into the person that God wants you to be.
Yep.
So
very good. All right, couple curveballs here. You go to the future in a rocket ship, and it's 15 years from now, where do you see yourself?
Retired.
That was the shortest answer that we've got.
Man, I kind of plan things out in life.
But do you mean retired from?
I want to be retired, relaxed, and refreshed 10, 15 years from now. Now, I know that I will always be in ministry in some capacity. Until the Lord calls me to glory, I will be doing some type of ministry. But I don't want to pastor and being an administrator until I'm 70.
Okay, I got you.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
I think that you can sometimes, stay too long or wear out the time, that your effectiveness. There's somebody shadow boxing, ready to take my place. That's what my pastor used to tell me all the time. He said, for every Mike Tyson, there's a Buster Douglas. There's somebody in the background shadow boxing, saying, I can take him, And so I kind of understand that, that there's some young pastor, preacher, whom God has already called and ordained for the day to come, And so I'm cool with that.
Right.
When I just hope that I can gracefully step aside and allow change to take place.
Okay. So looking forward, now looking back, I didn't send you this question.
Okay.
But we've sort of talked about it throughout the whole interview here anyway. Now, if you can go back and talk to your 15-year-old self, what advice would you give that 15-year-old Russell?
Love God then. I think that when I was growing up, Mama used to take me to church. But then around 11 or 12, she gave me the option. And so I stopped going to church. And on Sunday mornings, I used to watch Notre Dame football with Air Parcegia. And growing up in Greensboro, North Carolina, you watched the Dean Smith show, who was the basketball coach at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And so when Mama gave me an option, I pulled the cord on public transportation, got off the bus, and did my thing. And I didn't get back on the bus until 30 or 32 years old.
Okay.
But God didn't let me run to the front of the line. He made me go back to the place that I got off and get back on, to move forward. I didn't automatically, because of chronological age, mature. I had to go back the ABCs 1, 2, 3 of ministry, of study, of discipleship. Not so much the ministry portion of it, but the discipleship portion of it. I had to commit myself to be a learner, to saturate myself in His Word. God kind of, I don't know how anybody else has got to the place where they were or where they are in ministry. And Seth, you asked me how I got into this thing.
Yeah.
I'm driving down 271 South on my way home from work at Gills Garden Johnson Engineering after I had gotten out the military. The summer that I had gotten out the military, God had given me a job within a day after I discharged out the military. I didn't recognize God's voice at that time, but as time went by, I realized it. I'm on my way home, and I hear this voice in my car. I drove a Datsun 200 SX, and I hear the voice of the Lord say, "It's time." Now, He didn't say time for what. He just said it's time, and I did like this. I turned to my right and felt the seat in my car beside me because I could feel the presence of a person in my vehicle. And I just began to grin because I realized that I had just experienced the presence of the Lord. And so from that day, Seth, I never missed another Bible study, prayer meeting, opportunity to worship or anything. That was July of 1990. And to this day, I have never missed a Bible study, prayer meeting, worship service, a couple of days a week, somewhere. Because, 30 years now.
Yeah, I think some churches give awards out in the old school. They have little pins. If I had one, I'd give you one right now. You have like the world record.
A Bible study and prayer meeting.
Yeah, that's a serious streak you got there.
I'm telling you, I didn't ask for this, but he created this passion, this desire that I didn't even know was possible. I never knew that you could crave. Here's what I was thinking. I preached a message of Psalm 63 this past weekend that said, "My soul thirsts and my flesh yearns, and for you, oh God." And so when I start reflecting on that, and I think I'm gonna say it again this Sunday, the soul that thirsts and the flesh that yearns is like a crack addict for some. An addict for some crack, an alcoholic for a drink, or something of that nature. Is that I never knew that there was such a craving and desire for anything or anyone until God made me alive.
Wow. Yeah.
Until you're made alive, you don't know you can love like that because you've never been loved like that. But when he loves you like that, then you want it.
Right.
Yeah.
All the time.
Right.
I told you I can't, I said I was going to lose it a little bit. I just lost it just now.
Okay.
No, I'm loving it.
That's a perfect way to wrap up our time here. I want to say I have thoroughly enjoyed this.
Yeah, I have.
Is this something you'd like to do in the future again? Change up the topic and questions come in and chat it up?
Man, absolutely. There's one quote that I want to leave with everybody, about waiting and trying to see how you make it from one place to the next in God. I don't even know where I got this quote from, but it has been a part of my being. It says, "What God does for you while you wait is far more important than what it is that you're waiting for."
Wow.
I love it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can you do me a favor and actually read that one more time?
Absolutely. What God does for you while you wait is far more important than what you're waiting for.
This is unfortunate because this is either the beginning of a new podcast for like another conversation, or we got to leave that with the listener. So if you're listening out there, I want you to contemplate that. That's a good word. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
A great way to end it.
It's been a great time with you. I don't share a whole lot. People have heard today more about Russell V. Penn Jr., pastor of the Second Missionary Baptist Church, Penn, Pennsylvania, than they've heard in 28 years of being in the Valley, because I'm personal. I don't try to be the face of or the voice of. I just want to get work done.
Right. Yeah.
That's all I really want to do is how do we move forward? How do we cause change? How do we become examples, the living epistles, And so, man, this has been great. Anthony, I've developed a love for you, when we first started talking. We have a mutual friend that you mentioned when we first started. And there's nothing but love that I have for you. Seth, you know what? You're going to have to come on and get some of this love too.
Absolutely.
Because one thing I found out about love, there's an endless supply that comes from God. And so we ought to be just like that conduit, not a cylinder, but a conduit. Yeah. Cylinders are waste, but conduits will pass through, and so
It's awesome.
God bless you.
Thank you. Well, this is Anthony Cloditis at Faith Presbyterian Church and Seth Walters.
Yep.
We are wrapping things up at the Engage podcast for our Leader to Leader program. We hope you enjoyed it. If this has blessed you, we hope that you share this with someone that you think would enjoy it and be blessed by it. All right, Russell. This is us signing off.
Awesome.
All right. To God be the glory.
Amen.
It's been great.
All right, thank you guys for listening to today's episode. Did I tell you or did I tell you that this was going to be an amazing episode? We want to thank Russ Penn for coming. Again, his church is called Second Missionary Baptist Church in Farrell, PA. His website is in the link down below. But again, if you liked it, if you were encouraged by it, please, not only, as Pastor Anthony said, share it, but drop a comment, drop a review. We'd love to hear from you. We want to know what you think. If you want to hear more, hit the subscribe button so that every time we come out with a new episode on Thursdays, you will get a notification on your phone waiting for you. If you also want to get more content from us, you can go to our YouTube channel, which you can find from the link below, or you can go to our website, which is faithpc.net, and you can find all that you need to know about us there. So again, thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate you. We appreciate what God is doing, and we cannot wait for you to hear next week's interview. All right, guys.